property at the Devil's Backbone project in Howell County, Missouri. This tract is tract 17. It's surveyed with the corners marked. It's 5.65 acres in size, and it directly borders along its west side a gravel easement road and the Mark Twain National Forest. So you have physical access into tens of thousands of acres of public land for hunting and recreation and camping, and there are miles of trails and creeks and rivers for fishing and swimming and floating, just all right there at the west side of the property. So very special tract. Not only that, but it's heavily wooded. It does have an existing private driveway that leads back a couple hundred feet to the east to a cleared site that you could use for camping or potentially to have your RV or maybe even a cabin or a deer camp or a lot of options. So we'll zoom in on it, but let's quickly start at the county road here toward the right. West Plains, Missouri is about 10 miles southeast of the property, a little less than that. So that's a pretty good sized regional city. So you've got that nearby, but you are very private out here. I mean, you've got national forest and deer and turkey and a few other property owners, and that's about it. So to get to the property, we're going to go north out of West Plains on Highway 63 for 4 or 5 miles. Go west on County Road 4740 for a couple miles, and that'll get us to kind of this crossroads. Go north onto 4870, and then after just a couple hundred yards, you're going to go west onto the gravel easement road. That'll take you back to the Devil's Backbone project. So you'll see a gate maybe 100 feet back from the county road. Get a hold of us. We'll get you the combo for that. So purple line is the easement road and the easement road system at the Devil's Backbone project. Obviously, you do want a four-wheel drive truck or SUV, not only for the gravel county roads, but also for the gravel easement roads. The four-wheel drive, you may or may not need the actual four-wheel drive unless it's been raining, but you're going to have a little extra clearance with a four-wheel drive truck or SUV, and that can be important even if it's dry because you might encounter some ruts or potholes or whatnot, so it's good to have that extra clearance. So head west on that easement road. You'll kind of start with tract 1, head back that way, and pretty soon, and we'll zoom in here, you'll get to essentially a Y in the road. If you go straight, you'll go to the southern tracks. If you take a right, you'll go to what we call the north tracts, and this is one of the north tracts. So 13 through 19 are what we call the north tracts. They're not officially that, but that's how we identify them. And actually, as soon as you turn right, you'll only go about 300 or 400 feet, and you'll see tract 17 on the right side of the road. So actually, once you turn right or go north on this last little section of easement road, go about 100 feet, you've got the National Forest immediately on your left, and the property's on the right. So actually, one of our guys said this the other day when he was on that road. He said, yeah, if you stick your left hand out of the truck, that's in the National Forest. If you stick your right hand out, that's on the private property. So it's pretty cool. So there's tract 17, about 200 feet north to south. For a heavily wooded property, that gives you a lot of privacy. If this were open pasture, yeah, you'd probably see your neighbors if it were 200 feet. But a heavily wooded property with the site kind of centered, you've got a lot of privacy. So where were we here? You go north on that last section of easement road, and that's I was trying to come up with the measurements. You go about 400 feet. You'll see probably survey markers. You'll see tract signs in the trees, tract 19, 18, 17. You're looking for tract 17 in this case. The property is basically all wooded other than the driveway and the site, and I guess this old trail. And we'll mention that quickly just so no one gets scared by this. You'll see very, very common to see these old trails kind of crisscrossing and going here and there through rural developments like this one. That just has to do with when this was all one large tract. It was probably used by the same family for hunting for generations, and they had trail systems to get to and fro on the larger tract. When this got split up as the Devil's Backbone, or even prior to that, these trails that you see crossing over the kind of diagonally here and whatnot, those are not easements. So that's simply an old trail that would probably just eventually grow up and revert to timber unless you were to mow your section or whatnot. But the only access easement is going to be what you see as the purple lines here. So along the west side of the property, in this case, would be the access road. This line you see crossing over it is not access for anybody else. So if you wanted to fence, both sides of that, if that's something you want to do, you could. We've never had any issues with a deal like that, but just something to be aware of, and just so you don't see the aerial and think that there is an easement, crossing over the center of the property. There's not. It's just an old trail. So the access itself, this is one of the few tracts out here that not only does it lay really nicely, but it does already have a private driveway and a small cleared site. So that comes directly off the easement road, goes back to the east, looks like a couple 100 feet, and then it's a circular cleared site. And you can see the drone video and the ground video to check that out. The site obviously doesn't show up in this aerial because usually these aerial photos lag behind 3, 4, or 5 years from what's actually happening on the ground. So yeah, if you were to go out here and build yourself a little cabin next week, a little place to deer hunt, you probably wouldn't see it on a MapRight aerial for 3 or 4 or 5 years. Actually, we've got properties that have had changes made, and they don't show up on Google Earth, and it's been over 5 years. So that's just one of those things to keep in mind. But what we were saying earlier, the property is essentially all wooded, other than obviously the driveway and the site, and maybe some natural clearings. It's going to be mostly hardwood, more than likely. It's going to be a mixture of timber, but you'll have red oak, white oak, hickory. You likely will have some pine. You may have some cedar, so you might have some softwood as well. But hard to say without really walking the property. But if you check out the drone video, I think that can give you a good sense of it. I mean, it's a heavily wooded tract. No recent logging that we saw out here. We generally say everything's been logged at some point, and these tracts are no exception. But any stumps or anything that we saw were years and years and years old. So we didn't see any signs of recent logging. The only trees that you might see down or that are piled up that are not many years old will be just from improving the easement road system and from doing the driveways and sites and whatnot on some of the tracts. So with that being said, let's switch to a topo map, because this particular tract, if it's the one I'm thinking of, and it is, it lays very nicely. So what this topo is telling us is that the bulk of the west side of the property is almost flat. I mean, the topo map says it's flat. I believe from the actual easement road, it rises up as you pull onto the driveway and then levels off. But you could check out the videos to see that. But topos can't really show slight declines like that. The gradient between lines on this map is about 20 feet. So then as we go easterly, we can see the property does start sloping down, but man, that's a gradual slope down. I mean, the distance on that line, likely if you were out there walking, it would just feel like you were walking on flat ground. I mean, it just, they're getting a little closer as you get here toward the east side. So, I mean, you're going to see some slope, but you'd have enough slope there that, and actually once you're used to topos, you can kind of read these and they almost show up as three-dimensionally in your mind. What we're seeing here, if you kind of follow these sideways V's, that's some kind of gradual valley that starts on 16, and then the valley kind of goes southeasterly down to this wet weather creek. So this might be a spot if you wanted to do a pond or something like that on your property, you might be able to do it toward that east side. But yeah, as far as the lay of the land, this is a gorgeous tract. Some of these north tracts, including this one, are just super nice. If we just zoom out a little bit and you look at the topo of the surrounding area, I mean, this is the Ozarks. This is the real deal. So there are a lot of ups and downs, valleys and ridges, and a lot more steep or fairly steep ground than there is flat ground. And we've actually sold, even recently, We've sold 30 and 40 acre tracts that do not have as much level ground as this tract 17 does. So we think it's a very usable property. This topo map shows a few of the national forest roads. Actually, this road up here to the northeast really doesn't seem to exist. That's the downside with some of these topo maps, is they do not get updated very often. Let's go back to a Google map. Is this a Google? We like that other aerial. That looked a little cleaner. There we go. You've got a forest road off to the west, just a few hundred feet from the property. That's through the national forest. But yeah, I mean, great tract. Very limited number of these. We get so excited when we have a property even near the national forest. So to be able to have this handful of tracts that have frontage essentially right there on the national forest is just fantastic. I mean, it gives someone a great opportunity to have their own private campsite or deer camp, or potentially home or cabin on their own acreage, and then you've got a 30, 40, 50,000 acre backyard or front yard with that national forest. It's amazing when your buddies or your family come. Obviously, with five and a half acres, a little over 5.5 acres, you've got a lot of room to play. I mean, a lot of cool stuff you could do with that. That's especially on a property that's as level as this one is. Gives you a lot of space. But I mean, having that national forest with miles and miles and miles of trails, and you've got campsites, and you've got rivers and creeks for fishing and swimming and floating. I mean, it's all right there at the west side of the property. So that's pretty exciting. And then add to that the fact that, I mean, you're gonna feel secluded out here. You're gonna have national forest, but man, you're only 10 miles from a pretty good regional city, with West Plains, Missouri, being to the south. So that's only about 10 miles away. So West Plains has always been a great city, and it's growing all the time. So that's a big positive as well. So there you have it. That's a quick rundown of Tract 17. It is surveyed with the corners marked. If you have any questions, just let us know.